Here we're going to continue with Rav Harvness's chuvas on Hilchas Shabbos and regarding the halachas of preparing for Shabbos. Very applicable halachas. Every single day we're learning something applicable. This is in the Shalos Chuvas Nishmas Shabbos and Chelik Aleph and Simon Kuf Amal Aleph. We're going to pick up from where we learned yesterday. Here we go. Bedin Shtiyas Yayin Begimel Sudash Shabbos. Regarding the halachas of drinking yayin, during drinking wine during the 3 meals of Shabbos. Yishtadol lishtois yayin b'toich o lifnei kol hagimel suudas Shabbos. A person should strive to drink wine either in or before all of the 3 sudas on Shabbos. Interesting, he says before would count. Ayin Charles Shuvas Maram Ashakar Shemash Shekosov HaRambam Shik v'gimel sudas o Shabbos al yayin. Maram Ashakar writes that the Rambam says that you should have 3 meals on wine. That's not to say that the Rambam holds that one would need to make kiddush at Shalosh Shabbos. Rather, the idea is that each suda should be in a state of oneg, aka in a state of pleasure. And therefore, wine, as we know, typically gets people in a pleasurable physical state. And therefore, that will help with this and with getting an oneg Shabbos, but it is not necessarily for kiddush. That's why the Mishnah Berurah over there writes in the Hilchos Shalosh Shudas siman Reish Sadi Aleph that it is tov. It's good to have yayin, to have that wine during Shalosh Shudas. We might have actually ended with this one yesterday. I'm not sure, but anyways, it's short tshuva, so we'll do Chazara Odnir. The Lafiza Yesh Lahadir Lishos Yayin Mamish. Yayin Mavusas Los Tam Mitzvah Novim grape juice. You should try to drink actual wine according to this, not that fake stuff called grape juice. Miuzakin the Loimar the Masha Oisi Kiddush Al Yayin Samachum Miyad La Suda Shaper Choshem Kolea Sudaso Al Yayin. However, this idea that we're saying that if you're going to have yayin right before the Suda, that would in fact count. So that would actually halachically count for having the Suda with yayin. That would count, even if it wasn't during the actual Suda. So according to this, even if you made a Kiddush in Shul, so if there wasn't a Hamotzi over there that you had, and it wasn't a full-fledged Suda, even though you had Mazonos, it was passable Bekisnin, nevertheless, you should drink yayin afterwards, either right before your Suda or during the Suda.
Now,
yeah.
Kiddush Makom Suda, after you we Yotze in Kiddush already. There's no harm in that, not a Bakal Vatala, it's good.
We learned actually in Hilchos Kiddush from, if I'm not mistaken, it was a Shalos Chuvas Simlas Chaim, however it's pronounced. We learned that even though a person was Kovei Makom Suda in the shul, he made Kiddush in the shul, and he had the Mazonis, and it was considered Kovei Makom Suda, etc. Nevertheless, even though technically speaking, from a halachic perspective, if everyone already made Kiddush shul, another Kiddush does not need to be made at home. Nevertheless, it's preferable to make the Kiddush at home. It is preferable. Not only is it not a bracha of Sheina Shvicha, but it's preferable, and also Yishinu Makom, so you'd probably lose the bracha anyways. So, okay. Yeah, that's right. That is 100% correct. Okay, Lamein Nizar Kol Kach Bezman Hazeb Mitzvahs Hashchazu Sakin Be'erev Shabbos. We're talking about the halachas of sharpening knives. Why aren't people careful with this nowadays? The answer is Kosev Betam Mitzvahs Hashchazus Hasakin Kosev Ramah. The Ramah writes regarding sharpening knives in the name of the kolbo, Meshema kolbo. Kizehu Makavod Shabbos Shemechin Atzmo La'achil. This is considered an honor of Shabbos. That you prepare yourself for eating. V'cheinu b'lavush. Also, the lavush says this as well. But the Rokeach writes the reason is because of Shalom Bais. In other words, there's a few reasons for sharpening the knife. One mahalach, and remember it. The mahalach, this is the approach of the kolbo. The kolbo says that it's considered honoring Shabbos if you prepare everything that you need for achilah, and you're preparing yourself and everything that you need, all of the paraphernalia that you have for eating preparations. However, the Rokeach writes that no, but this is because of Shalom Bais. According to the Rokeach, you sharpen the knife. Why? Peace in the house. Because if the blade, the knife blade, won't be sharpened, so then a person will be able to cut with it preferably. Yeah?
So what's the Shabbos meaning that it's just better if they're able to cut better, so you'll adapt your food better? Like, what does that mean?
Oh, so he's going to explain the next line.
Oh, okay, sorry.
והכוונה שסכין חד אחר יום מספר שמשתמשין עמו מסתלקס, a blade, a knife blade that was sharp, but after a lot of usage sometimes, so then it removes that sharp cut. Chidudo, that sharpness gets removed. Ve'eno choiteches, and that it will not cut very nicely. So that could cause an issue. The goyrim ichor hasudog va'agmas nefesh, that could cause a delay of the Suda and a little bit of annoyance. Therefore, you sharpen every single week to make sure that it's sharp. Zeger master shaf echar shonim shel shimush chatechel b'tov. So if you're going to use a knife that he calls a zeger master, which I actually asked someone who knows Yiddish what this is. He said it's a serrated knife.
Messer is definitely a knife, yeah.
What?
Messer in Yiddish is a knife.
Yeah. So
Wait, what's the question?
what is a zeger maser? So he wanted to say that it's a serrated knife. This is why I assume you could just keep the box open while.
It's Yiddish or no?
So this is a serrated knife. All right, a serrated knife. For all those who don't know,
That's one of those is not.
Yeah.
it's got the
That's serrated.
edges. You see, it's got those edges thing.
Yeah.
They call it a bread knife in English. All right. So what are we talking about over here? So he says like this: if you're going to use a serrated knife, and it will still cut well after a lot of time, in sarach besh sucking, you don't have to sharpen that.
No.
And that's what we need most of the time, because it seems like when it comes to the rules of knife sharpening, only if it is not serrated does it need to be sharpened. It's straight. If it's serrated, there's nothing to sharpen on that. You don't need to buy specifically a straight knife in order that you cut it.
You need to sharpen, yeah.
That in order that you need to sharpen it. Thank you. You don't need to. You could use that type of knife. But what about the reason of the kolbo? No, that was the reason of the rokeach, and it's not going to cut well. Rokeach said shalom bayis is not going to cut well, right? That's what I said. Remember the reasons.
Because the Iker, right?
It's going to delay, and it could cause on some level an agman nefesh, right?
But the kolbo was.
The kolbo.
Shabbos.
Kabo, right, and preparing for Shabbos, right? That was he was saying shemeichen atzmo la'achila. You're preparing yourself and all the paraphernalia that you need for achila. So according to the kolbo, the reason would still apply to sharpen the knife, because you're showing some form of preparation. I don't really know how you sharpen a serrated knife, to be honest. Ulai b'mashem esader kli achila kapos umaz logois v'sakinim. But the idea is that by setting the table with spoons, forks, knives, ala shulchan mevoy jom, when it's still there, yoytze gamkin inyan zeh shemar kavod Shabbos ma'ashemichan atzma la'achila. So by setting the table, you are essentially fulfilling the reasoning of the kolbo, right? Who said that you want to prepare everything that you need for the suda, so you're preparing the other silverware. And this is not like what I heard. The reason why some are stringent to use on Shabbos to cut the chalos. Only with a knife that is sharp and smooth. In other words, he's saying you heard from people, no. Only use a knife which isn't serrated so you could sharpen it. And they hold that there's an idea of actually sharpening the knife. But according to what he's saying, that no, you don't need to sharpen the knife unless it needs to be sharpened. That's his point over here. That's his theory that he's trying to bring out of here. You don't need to go out of your way to buy a knife which isn't serrated in order that you can fulfill this mitzvah of sharpening. No, you only need to sharpen if it needs to be sharpened. But if it doesn't, then you don't need to.
I mean, nowadays, you don't see anybody sharpening knives nowadays, do you? I mean, just
No.
Thomas, even by the guy.
No.
Everybody has.
When I need the blade of the bottom of my lawnmower sharpened, I mess around with it. I bring it to the place over there. They do it for $10. That's it. And even so, you don't need to after 200 mows. I mean, it depends how big the property lot is, but after using the thing probably for, I don't know, 500 hours, you need to sharpen it. 300, depends how you use it. You know, you got to use it the right way. You don't want to mow when the grass is all wet and they're going to clump and everything, and that's going to dull the blade maybe because everything's going to clump there. But so you have to know, you know, just treat your stuff well. It will last much longer than if you don't. Anyways, okay, some are stringent not to use a serrated knife. So Lakuti Marich explains, sucking chad who segula leparnasa. A sharp knife is a good segula to have good parnasa. Like I always like saying, you know what else is a good segula for parnasa? Getting educated and working hard and being in the right industry and doing the right thing. That's my segula for parnasa. Mishum, this is really the education zikr and the hustle. Mishum desakin she'eno chad oisa perudin v'kashin laniyusa. Because a knife which is not sharp will make crumbs. If the knife isn't sharp, it's going to make crumbs. Now, crumbs, they could be bad for poverty. They could lead to that. So therefore, naturally also, or the more so certainly, you don't want to use a knife which has the pagimos in it, the serrated. Shemar balaso is perun, because now you're gonna have a lot of crumbs. In other words, a serrated knife could be an issue because it will cause the crumbs. According to this idea, in the davar sof, you could say you shouldn't buy certain challahs because they're more crummy. Challahs come in many different sizes and shapes, just like mankind, right? So just like humans. So according to this, if the serrated knife is going to cause more crumbs, maybe you should also not buy the what do you call it, the certain challahs, because it's going to cause the crumbs. I don't know about that. Mamela kosher shekol shekain shalol ishtamish besakin hasuya impagimos. So all the more so, you don't want to use a knife, which is right. Shamar b'lasos proven. Amna kasha lahavin tam and iskal. It's difficult to understand that reasoning. Who even says that? Maybe based on Lakuti Ma'arech. It's difficult to understand that reasoning. So only if you're like stepping on the crumbs with your feet is that bad, and could that be a problem in terms of poverty? As it says in Maseches Chulin, Adrabah Matur Mishmei Disadikim, Sheish Inyim Sheyuchim. They quote from Sadikim that there's an idea of gathering all of the crumbs together of the Chal and Shabbos and eating them. So perhaps the reason for this is because l'chachila, preferably it's prohibited to cause the farer pas bekedi, to crumble bread just for no reason. Mishum bal tashlis. In other words, this is better than just throwing out the crumbs, maybe because bal tashlis wasting. Avshanas and pure and pachim kizayis, even if it's less than kizayis. Okay. That's itself questionable.
Most colonizers that I've used,
Yeah.
there could be it's not are sort of serrated in some way.
Right. Yeah, that's his point that he's saying over here. But I mean, now according to those who are attacking the serrated idea, so maybe this is perhaps a reason. But he's not going down that route, saying that you have to get a non-serrated. He's not saying that. He's trying to say perhaps on why people are part of the anti-serrated knife movement on Shabbos.
Just explaining.
Yeah, he's explaining that. Potential reason. Ubesefer Korban Shabbos kosav al pisoid in Rosh Shabbos pogum. So Korban Shabbos writes that for Kabbalistic reasons, it's not fitting to use on Shabbos with a knife that is pogum, which literally means blemished, which means that needs to be sharpened and isn't. And therefore, hence that's where the sharpening will come in. I feel like nowadays it will cost more money to sharpen a knife than just to buy a new one.
Buy a new one.
People don't even know how to sharpen knives. You probably need like a special rock, which people don't have, or a special type of like flat rock type of thing.
Probably on
And people
Amazon.
just don't do it because the knives are just so cheap nowadays. The way
Right,
you could probably get a good knife for $6.
probably sharpening.
I'm not in the market, but this isn't my like I say, the only numbers that I grind are 3 or 4 digits or above. Anything below that, that's I don't grind that. That's just not my responsibility. That's how we work things out in our house. So I don't know. I'm on the knife department, but market. But yeah, that's why this is kind of funny learning about this. That's why you sharpen it so you won't see the blemish. Feed the of Yeshua. The lav dafka benoigeya hasakin shemishtamshin imo lebetzias hapas alechem mishnah. Alaf oshar sakin mishtamshin imo l'sarach suda Shabbos. According to this, it's not just talking about the knife that you're using to cut the challah. This is talking about any knife that you're going to use in your suda. B'chein b'sefer kafachayim maybe b'sefer. I'm not sure who this is. Chetz Mem Yud? Not sure. Tam al pisod sholish tamish im sakim pogum. Also, the Kaf HaChaim says, for Kabbalistic reasons, you don't want to use a knife that has a blemish. Ulefi devar of yesh leimer she'af b'yemoisach lo yishtamish im sakim pogum. This even during the weekday. According to this, you don't want to use a knife that has blemishes in it. So, not just challah knife. So anyways, this is something interesting to think about.
Don't they say, we learned it by like Chos brachos that it's really you take the bread and you're supposed to rip it
Yeah.
with 2 hands and you rip it as opposed to. I think some people actually do that Shabbos. I'm not sure.
Nope. Incorrect.
No, they shouldn't do that.
We discussed over there, recording rabbiblon.com, siman kuf samach zayin sif beis, if I'm not mistaken. It's toward the beginning of the siman, might be beis sif aleph.
Yeah.
We discussed over there that, and the truth is, we discussed when we learned siman reish ayin dalid, if I'm not mistaken. That's the siman that immediately follows Ochos Kiddush. Remember, reish ayin dalid, Rishina Makom,
You take it.
Rishina Makom by Kiddush. That we learned over there that during the week, when you eat bread, so the idea is, this is how we hold, that the idea is that you don't want there to be an interruption between when a person is eating the bread and from when a person recites the bracha to when he eats the bread. Now, what does that mean practically? Let's talk about a bagel. All right? No one cuts bagels. No one. You cut it in the middle, and then you put a zach in there, and then you hold the whole bagel and you eat it. Right? Which, by the way, gets into another shaila, which comes up in siman kuf ayin, which is the halachas of holding more than a kazayis worth of bread in one shot. Where
Really?
you learn the Shulchan Aruch over there, it seems like it's against the Shulchan Aruch. However, the Shalos Juvas or Letzion, which by the way is also quoted by the Derech over there, if I'm not mistaken, is lenient, and he says that no, anything that's the derech to eat that's more than a kazayis, such as a slice of pizza, a bagel, you could hold it even though it's more than a kazayis. Important halacha, I don't know. Anyways, the point is that so if a fellow's eating a bagel, so he's not gonna cut that bagel, he's gonna eat the whole bagel. So what he should do is he should start ripping off a piece of the bagel before he starts reciting the hamotzi on the bagel. Right?
Then that's not a shalom. I know.
Now, what does the rip off the bagel mean? That doesn't mean it's a full rip. He rips it while the piece is still connected to the extent that if you would pick up the bagel, let's say it was cut in the middle, so just the top. If you would pick up the top of the bagel while holding the part of the bagel, which is the smaller ripped off part, the rest of the bagel will come up. It's still considered shalom. It's still considered full, while at the same time, it minimizes its potential interruption between the bracha and the eating of the bagel, even rather than just biting right into it. Seems like. Do it with his hands in this type of way. That would minimize it, and then he ripping it off. Also, let's say, for example, a person has a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Same idea. Now, what about Shabbos? Devil, what'd you say?
There was something in the background.
Skiing? What's going on?
In the background, I was going to to bring stuff to the garage. So it was cold in the garage. I put a jacket on.
All right, enjoy the garage. Bundle
Yeah,
up.
I know. We're still on. We went to the elevator too.
Okay,
You went-
okay.
You still can't remember.
Akopanim, so on Shabbos, yeah? So Shabbos, you can't do that, because there's more of a halacha of lechem mishnah, of a shalem, of it being b'shleimus mamish. So what we do instead of the rip action, we do the dab with the knife. The dab with the knife basically tells us, okay, this is around where we're gonna cut, and therefore we're gonna already premeditate where we're gonna cut, which is also halachically considered minimizing the hefsek.
So technically, so we do, right, we use the knife on Shabbos, but during the week, we do that little ritual of the saying.
Yeah. However, it's a type of dish that I'm trying to think, something that I'm a little whatever when it comes to this. Let's say you have a very messy and saucy type of meat pizza or something. You know what those are.
Yeah.
What about a burger? A burger.
Right.
The bread.
I'm making something up, or you have something else which is very messy. So sometimes I would actually use a fork and knife. So if you're gonna use a fork and knife, so in that case, you wouldn't rip it with your fingers, because it's not something that you're gonna be eating with your fingers. So you maybe take a little cut before. Which with the whole thing that's attached idea during the week. The sloppy joe is in hamotzi though, so it wouldn't apply, right?
No, it's not,
It is?
the Italian bread, you know,
It
with
is?
the meat in there.
Oh, okay, I didn't
Sloppy Joe is just,
really eat that stuff, so, yeah,
Getting hungry.
yeah, getting hungry, yeah. All right, that's good. Okay, food's good. In moderation. Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, moving right along to the next tshuva. Is there gonna be time to do this one? I think there will be. Person could get a lot done in 8 minutes. Mahu geder oinig Shabbos. Shiyoichel kol ma shetov nafshel amayis ko. Oh, this Musar, this tshuva is pashut Musar Charifos ad ma'od.
Okay.
This is one of my favorites. What is oinig Shabbos? What is the definition? Should you just eat whatever you want? No calories, no limits, no diets. You do whatever you want. It's a free country. You could just untie the strap. You just go loose. Go loose, unbuckle your belt. Let your stomach expand as much as you want. We know the good old trick. Open the zipper on your pants, the button. Just go fully loaded. Mitzvah kaddish with motor lachol dilma binyan. Maybe you also have to be lishma. Maybe you have to do it for its own reason also. So what is Oneg Shabbos? Chavin liba l'shamayim. You gotta have the right intentions. There's a difference between Oneg Shabbos and an Oneg of your guf. That's what he's gonna discuss over here. For sure. Eat whatever you like on Shabbos, as the pasuk says. Pasuk doesn't depart from its simple explanation. The Or Zarua says this as well. Right, so you eat on Shabbos if you like. But I saw the Lavush writes, and actually the first siman Hilchos Shabbos. He writes over there, he talks about the great reward that a person will receive for Shabbos. So the Lavush talks about the great reward that a person will get for guarding Shabbos. Excuse me. So he says that when a person is going to fulfill his desire to have an Oneg Shabbos properly for the sake of heaven, l'shem shamayim, not for his own pleasure. So that's good. That's tzaddikim. Because someone who's doing an Oneg Shabbos, they say that's talking about it's an Oneg Shabbos itself. V'loy hamaneg atzmo b'Shabbos. But not you're giving a pleasure to yourself. The pleasure is for Shabbos. Shabbos is getting an onig, not an onig. All Shabbos an onig. Risinami Sharakin, the Shlach HaKadosh also has length about this. Vayin Sham, Terchacham Agula, Mamenu Eskritzim. He rebukes those people who filling up their stomach 100%. Oh, and then they're all full, so they take a shluf after. Their brain's not being used. Their soul's losing out. They can't learn Torah anymore. Last like the Torah mitzvahs, they just schluffing the whole day. The wise person, his eyes, ears, and his head, aka he foresees the repercussions of his current actions, what will occur in the future. Eat small quantity, but a lot of quality. It's about the quality, not the quantity. In order that a person can take advantage of these Geshmak Shabbos afternoon, sit and learn. Learn Torah, review what we're learning now. I also saw in the Ksav Sofer the Malay is someone who's overeating on Shabbos. He's not having the intention for the holiness and the honor of Shabbos. Comes along the Chasam Sofer and says you don't even fulfill your obligation of the mitzvah of Shabbos. This isn't some random achron. This is a Heilig Chasam Sofer b'kavaydu ba'atzmoi. Shabbos. Do the Mashal Chazal Meseches Nazir Daf Kav Ches Shnaim Shetzal Peschem Echad Och L'Shem Mitzvah Echad Och L'Shem Achilas Gasa Al Zayin Emar Sadikim Yachlam Aposhim brings a raya from Hilchos Pesach L'Korban Pesach. Point is, we got to get serious about Shabbos. All right, we got to rush through this. Looks like we're going to get kicked out in 3 minutes, 14 seconds. V'chein Aruch HaShulchan writes this as well in Siman Reish Nun. After he writes, whoever adds on the expenses of Shabbos, adds to spend to his expenditures for Shabbos, will be added from Shamayim. He says, Shabbos Kodesh, as long as you're having the intention that it's for Shabbos Kodesh. You go back to the recordings. By the way, we learned that Aruch HaShulchan, and when we learned that, before I even learned this tshuva, I said this is an important line. Aruch HaShulchan, I went into it a little more. I remember. Telling you, it's on the recordings from 13 parts ago. I think it was like part 2. It's early on in the siman. Comes out that if a person is having the intention in order to honor Shabbos, in order just to bring a physical enjoyment to his body and for his own pleasure, that's not considered a Shabbos expense. Where Chazal said that if you add to your expenses for Shabbos and your food, then you'll be added from Shamayim, you'll get more money. It has to be l'shem Shamayim. It's obvious, whatever a person's eating on Shabbos, it's got to taste good. And that is the reason for the mitzvah of from tasting the Shabbos food, Erev Shabbos Kodesh as well. You want to clarify that the food is going to taste good. Make sure taste for us. Make sure you're not eating bitter food as well on Shabbos. That's right. Yeah, that's actually, I think he's going to have another tshuva on the diet. Mirz Hashem, yeah, we're going to get to diets. So make sure that the food tastes good. Even if your kavanah is lishma, because Shabbos is given for an opening, not chas v'shalom, for a pain. V'davar zemavur, this is explained in many places. Look at the Seder Hayom that on Shabbos you should spice up your food so that it will taste delicious, and you'll eat it with an appetite, and it will smell good, even though during the week you don't add it, you don't make it as spicy. Shabbos, spice it up, make it spicy, make it geschmack. Then he says over here, Sarach Ian, you need to look into it. Someone who is not able to go over his taivas. When he eats, he can't stop eating. And when he eats the food, he's just thinking, oh, it's so geschmack. He's thinking about his stomach the whole time, not Shabbos. So he wants to say, since originally his intention was in honor of Shabbos, it could count, even though afterwards his Yetzer Hara got the best of him, and it was just about his stomach. He goes into it over here. And he says, also for children, make sure as well to buy good food for your children as well. Good food that they like. And then at the end he says from the Taras HaKodesh HaKadmon, he says that maybe even on Shabbos you shouldn't have too many delicacies, because L'maisa we don't have the base of Mikdash anymore. And even don't wear very, very fancy clothing because we don't have the base of Mikdash. And he says this is a rebuke on the women who sometimes they dress up very, very fancy.
Wow.
Just keep it to the very fancy.
Sometimes you know.
Yeah, it's an idea. Yeah, okay, it's an idea. All right, so Mirz Hashem.